Well. Come on, you Maggies. Hello. Welcome to
boys.
Mag. Right, lads.
Evening, lads.
Lads, if it's okay. I just want to test that we still have George. So I'm going to ask George a question. Okay, I'll just bring him on for a sec and we'll bring him back off again. George. No, George can't hear me.
Can you hear us, lads?
Yeah, George, I just want to ask
Hello,
you,
mate.
what's tomorrow?
Hello.
Doesn't know.
It's Friday. You're right.
Just
It's
about.
Friday then. It's Saturday, Sunday. Woo!
I've switched the phone and it's.
It's Friday then. It's Saturday, Sunday. Woo! Friday then, it's Saturday, Sunday, woo!
God.
You know it.
Imagine someone tuning into that going, what the fuck is
One
that?
of these guys had. So that was the extended remix edition. And the bad news is we've lost George again. But just a word of warning. I just want to warn anyone that's going to the protest that you see scrolling on the bottom of the screen tomorrow to don't approach this guy and don't purchase any of his new fragrance. Sexy zebra from Avon. Stay away from it. 60% of the time, it works every time. Stay well clear tomorrow in London. So lads, we're gonna have to crack on. This is where we had planned to bring out George, but he is having some technical issues. So we'll jump straight to. I think we'll jump straight to the story that's capturing Twitter anyway, and it is of Joe Willock. What do you make of the story going on, guys?
It's definitely interesting, isn't it? We got in our chat earlier today. We got someone posted that on the Premier League official website, which I think you've actually got the picture of the screenshot Daz to put up. The Premier League have been very forthcoming to update that Newcastle have actually got Willock for next year already, which is very, very interesting. As you can see the picture on the screen straightforward. It's as we were talking about before, it's a shame that the Premier League can't be so efficient with takeovers, speed them through that quick, rather than player announcements, announcing them before the clubhouse themselves. So if it's true, the rumours doing the round is it's a season-long loan with a possible 17 million option to buy at the end of it, which, if it is true, I think it's a decent bit of business, especially with the finances at the club at the moment, and hopefully where the finances will be within a few weeks. So that should be, I would like to say it will be pocket change by the time it comes around to the end of the season if we decide to take that option up.
Cheers, Rich. And great to see George back with us, we think, at least.
He's debating.
He's there in spirit. No, he's gone again.
I think he's still in shot with the zebra, Daz.
Yeah.
Chris,
Yeah.
what do you make of the Willock story?
I hope it's true. I really do hope it's true, because if we get Joe Willock back, it'll be a massive boost for next season, with or without the takeover. I mean, we're most definitely in need of reinforcements in central midfield, and getting Joe Willock back would be great. The one thing I'd say, and I always sound really pessimistic, don't I? But I just hope that some fans aren't too hopeful that he's going to kind of continue the form that he did, because 8 goals in 14 games is some record. And I really hope he does. Don't get me wrong, and I think he's a really good player, and I'm really pleased if the rumours are true that he's coming in. But at the same time, yeah, just exercise caution. He's only 21, and I just hope too much expectation doesn't go on his shoulders, because I think he's a fantastic prospect, and I think he's someone who can really make a difference in our central midfield. And I hope it's true. So the rumours aren't they, that it's a $5 million upfront loan fee with whether it's an obligation to buy or an option to buy. We were discussing that just before, weren't we, lads? Personally, I hope it's an option, and we can exercise that option if we wish to. If it's an obligation, don't get me wrong, I'm not disappointed in any way, but it just means, I think it was Pete that mentioned, the Kennedy factor. There's always that risk, isn't there, that he could come back this season and maybe not hit the ground running, and maybe a few fans will be like, oh, do we want to pay 17 million for him? And obviously, if it's an obligation, there's no going back. But either way, let's hope he comes through the door, because it's a much needed addition to the squad, isn't it? So fingers crossed.
And I guess if it was a case he did come in for that price and it didn't work out, I think it will work out. Even if he scored half the amount of goals, it's a success. But he's so young. There's a sell-on factor, or you could sell him on again for a decent price. And I'm going to add George back in as we go to you, Pete.
Sorry, boys.
Let's look better, George.
No worries.
Yeah, with Willock, it's a deal that has to be done. It's a deal that, it'd be really nice to see a player come in early and actually get a pre-season at the club under his belt, because I think it's really needed. I spoke to you lads just before we went on air, and the one thing that really sticks out for me, people in the chat, correct me if I'm wrong, but since he's been back at pre-season at Arsenal, there's been no real recognition of or acknowledgement of the fact that he's back at Arsenal. Whereas the only things that I've seen, whether it's on Twitter or Instagram, mostly Instagram, is that he's liking or commenting on things that St. Maximin's putting on, or Callum Wilson, or he's engaging more with the Newcastle players than he is with his own sort of parent club. Yeah. And that for me is a good thing. It's a really good thing. Because it shows that he was happy with us. It shows that he wants to be back with us. And I think the noises over the last couple of days, I think there was an article from Liam Kennedy that said, they're looking to wrap it up before Arsenal go to America for their American tour, which they go on Saturday. So, within the next couple of days, in the next 24 hours, I reckon we'll hear something. And let's face it, he's not that far away right now. He's only in Edinburgh. So it's a short drive away from Newcastle. So if it's ever going to get done, now's the time to do it.
Well, if the plane spotters are to believe, Pete, apparently, Mike actually sent his private jet up to Dundee this morning to pick Willock up. And to be fair, did actually go back down to Luton, which I suppose is Willock's neck of the woods if he wants to pick his kit up. But I think one of the telling things for me was Arsenal played Hibs on Tuesday night for their little mini Scotland trip. They had a decent team, had a decent squad, and Willock was nowhere to be seen. So to me, that says it all, because it would have been the perfect opportunity for Arteta to have a look at Willock, but not to even make the squad. It does say to me that he's on his way to us.
Well, Arteta said strategically, in my opinion, that he had a groin injury. Apparently, he trained amazing and very, very well the day before, but then all of a sudden on game day, there was a groin injury that just magically appeared. And I'm sure, if there's a medical in the next 24 hours at Newcastle, I'm sure that groin injury will magically disappear all over again. But look, let's face it. As I said to you guys before I went on air, I think Joe Willock, and rightly so in my opinion, has gone back to us and said, look, I want to be playing week in, week out. I've had a taste of it. I enjoyed it. I've performed on the back of it. If you're not going to give me that week in, week out opportunity in the first team, then I'll go to a club that actually, you know, if you look at positions in the league, weren't that far away from Arsenal, and I'll go and play there every week. You know, you look at our form at the back end of the season, and you know it's up there with the likes of Arsenal and maybe even slightly better. So, you know, who's to say that with a fit St. Maximin and a fit Wilson, who really up their game when he's in the team, when Willock's playing, who's to say that we can't kick on? So
it's a good relevant point in that Dave just mentioned there. We should be looking to build our team around Willock, Miggy, and ASM. You know, last year, you know, and have a Wilson up top. It's a fantastic front four, and then possibly have Fraser back as a new player, depending on what mindset he's in. So, you know, I think Fraser hopefully is going to be more like a new signing for us, compared to what he contributed last year, really. So hopefully with a full pre-season behind him, and he's
heard that phrase, Richie.
That phrase.
Andy Carroll could be a new signing yet first.
Oh my God!
Don't mention him. Don't mention him. Actually, just as an aside, before we go to George, I saw something today that Baptiste Cisse wants to come back to the Premier League. So would you take him back as well, Chris? as well as Carroll?
I don't know. I don't know about Cisse. I've got to be honest, but no, I'm not even going to say it. I was going to go on a big rant then. No, I won't say it. But no, I love Papi Cisse. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, nothing compared to Big Andy. No. Sorry, George. Let's welcome back, George. You're back again.
Yeah, I think my laptop might have overheated from sitting in the conservatory in the sun. To be fair, so sorry about that.
George, don't lie. Your laptop overheated because you were constantly pressing refresh on the cat website. Don't lie.
Yeah, I did have to close down everything else that I did have open. That was very true as well.
Nice one. Well, welcome back to the show anyway, George. I'm going to hand over to Chris. Do you have any particular question you want to put towards George, or do you want to talk? Do you want to talk the court cases, or do you want to talk protests first? That's which way do you want to go?
I reckon we talk protests first. Why not? What do you reckon, George?
Yeah, it's tomorrow, isn't it?
Bring
So, I mean, do you just want us to set away and crack on?
Crack on. I have a little video on it, but I think
do the video. Do the video.
Everyone knows it, but let's build up. Tense.
It is tense, isn't it? It's
tense. 24 hours away now.
Have you seen the one which is in red and white that starts off with United? That one's triggered quite a few people over the last couple of days. So yeah, the protest is tomorrow, Parliament Square tomorrow at 1 o'clock. For anybody who's able to either get the coach train down or meet fans there. Sorry, lads. It's partially my fault. That it happened. I say partially because it's one of those things that kind of snowballs and spirals out of control. Obviously, 1st of July, the club issued a quite, what I'd say, telling statement, and it links to probably some of the takeover discussion that we'll have invariably in terms of the arbitration and the CAT case. But the fact that they called for transparency sort of got a few of us thinking. So there was 4 of us in a Twitter chat who regularly talk all things takeover, chewing the fat in the same way that we do here. And we just said, well, what can we do? And I mean, I think I jokingly put on Nick DeMarco's Twitter feed, Nick, if I wanted to support the club, what should I do? And it sort of stemmed from there. It snowballed. I'd even go as far as to say, because within 24 hours, we had the NUFC protest hashtag set up. All of a sudden, we were in a WhatsApp group, and there was 12 of us, including people like Tyler, who'd obviously doorstepped their Premier League headquarters. Some of the lads from the Magpie group, who London Mags, who've been in. And I mean, people like Steve Wraith and Steve Hasty providing support, guidance, help, because those guys have sort of been around for a while and done this kind of thing. So it all, the last 2 weeks has been a bit of a blur, because I suppose you don't realise how much effort goes into a protest in terms of the drafting letters for MPs that can be used. True Faith published one of the drafts that we pulled together. We've written so many more. I think we contacted 30 MPs individually. Ask other people to do the same. I mean, the fact that fans have gone out and done other things that we couldn't have even possibly thought of has just been absolutely amazing. So, like, people have contacted the Independent Football Ombudsman and things like that. I use the word snowball and spiral because that's what it's been like. And like, with 12 people in a WhatsApp group sort of all firing different ideas in, some of them are obviously good, some of them not so good. So kind of about the sort of playing over Wembley. It all stemmed from we can get somebody to fly a banner over St James's Park, and there was the general, it's a bit Macamee this, isn't it? We wouldn't necessarily want it. And then it's going to be free, it's going to cost nothing, and we can get a nice message on it. And then all of a sudden it went from there to, well, how much would it cost to do it over Wembley during the final, the half-time or something like that, with that message? And nobody saw any of the negatives to that at all. So everybody, it was a really good idea. And then you sort of get in from work a few hours later and you see the like furor on Twitter, and it's like, oh, we've made a proper mistake here. We just need to rein that in and just think about what we're doing, because rightly or wrongly, we had the best intentions, and it wasn't about disrupting anyone's day or performance and things, but it was never about just for us, it's bigger than that, because the takeover is like, it's number one on our agenda. And I mean, I will hold my hands up and say quite quickly, the takeover means more to me than England winning the European Championship. I know some other people agree, other people don't, but that's where I sit.
I agree.
It comes down to the fact that I'm part Scottish, like, to be fair, and you're like traumatic for me. Not so much this time around, but so yeah, we've done that absolutely loads. We've written a load of MPs. We've got a couple of things planned for tomorrow as well, which I won't spoil the surprises on there. But like I say, it's been a wicked 14 days in terms of just organising things, speaking to councils, local authorities, the police, making sure that it's COVID safe, doing risk assessments. Who thought you would have to do a risk assessment to rock up with a protest? But you do, and then it has to get scrutinised by a council and tell you that it's compliant with the Equalities Act. So the amount of information that we've learned as a group has been phenomenal. The amount of support that we've had from the fan base just genuinely has been amazing. And today, over the last few days, there's been banners and things that people have made themselves being posted around Twitter, and it's going to be a really good day tomorrow. I think it's going to have the weather for it, hopefully, and like I say, the Met have been very supportive of what we're doing, because not everybody tells them, in fairness. And yeah, I think it's going to be a good day, and hopefully, if nothing else, we've helped to add to the media narrative. Oliver Dowden spoke about it this week, and you can argue that he's basically fobbed it off, but he talks about transparency. The Independent Football Ombudsman's talked about the legitimate concerns that Newcastle fans have around transparency. And really, we want the Prime Minister to come out and say something. He was quick to get involved in the European Super League, and we see this as equally a bigger issue than that, because I think at the end of the day, whilst this is specifically around the Newcastle arbitration, this could happen to any team in the league. I mean, what's going to happen if Watford get attempted to get taken over and the Premier League step in or delay? We need to have some kind of transparency on the decisions which impact the club, because to be told, well, to not be told anything for 15 months, it's abhorrent. It's just it's no wonder there's so much clickbait and rumor, and why people like me why people are interested in talking to me. They're only interested in talking to me because I'm guessing about what's there, because nobody's saying anything, because it's silence, and without that information, what it does is it leaves a vacuum, and that vacuum gets filled by just nonsense. And and that's no good for anybody. So they talk about mental health and players' mental health and fans' mental health, but this, and I mean, I know it's a sort of hot topic, but it really is when you think of something like this, which is something you're passionate about, and it's passionate about the transfers that come in. Sorry, I'm on my soapbox now, and you're not going to stop us.
Go for it. Go for it.
About the team on the pitch. You're passionate about the manager who's managing your team. You're passionate about the people you're in that ground with. You're passionate about the region. You're passionate about the people who support the club. You're passionate is an understatement in terms of how some individuals feel around this type of thing. So to be told nothing, to hear nothing for that amount of time, just it means that people try to grasp onto planes. I mean, helicopters, yachts, meetings in Nice that a solicitor is posting because he likes to take photographs, because he bakes bread. I mean, yes, you've got to take it with like a certain level of sense of humor, but it's no wonder this type of thing happens when realistically you get no information. And I think we've got to be mindful. And I'm not going to give the game away tomorrow, but some of the things that we've said to the Prime Minister about Newcastle fans and how they are. So me, I'd say I'm a dreamer, but I'm a realist, and I'm a dreamer because I grew up with a sort of Keegan-led team and watched that free-flowing, fantastic football, and you always thought that Newcastle were going to win, and that stayed with me. That optimism, that belief, irrespective of who the manager was, even with Steve Bruce in charge, I hope that for every game with St. Maximin, with whatever that small chink light is, I'm looking for that optimistic view forward. So, but then the realist in me is like, well, with Steve Bruce in charge, we're going to be sort of above relegation zone, up the 10th, and I can live with that for the time being. It's not helpful that Mike Ashley doesn't put in what he should to the club, but that's a bit. But from a realistic point of view, from the Premier League side, we know it's a commercial deal. We know the sensitivities that sit around that, but they could have the decency to say, well, this process generally takes this amount of time. This hearing is happening on this day, and it will take 10 days. And in that 10 days, there will be a judgment, and that judgment will then lead to either the owners and directors test on these people or the owners and directors test on that people. And that's all gleaned from what we think is going to happen. But they could put that to bed by saying, this is what will happen. Because we understand that judges are going to be the ones who make the decision. And again, I haven't got a problem with that. I said it on the last show. I have faith in the justice system. And you can argue about lack of transparency, corruption, whatever you want to call it within the Premier League. But within the legal system, we've got 3 people who are effectively independent, who will be applying the rule of law. And I have faith in that. What I don't have faith and confidence in is that will be timely reported to the fans and accurately reported to the fans. And there's a number of reasons behind that. So I just look at the EFL's judgment against Derby. So there seem to be 2 opposing conflicting narratives coming out of that in terms of what the actual outcome was. And that's not beneficial to anybody. So for me, the whole transparency, the fans for transparency, that agenda is very much, it's not just for Newcastle fans. It's just Newcastle fans are the ones who are feeling it now. It's for any other fan in the country who has a decision that needs to be made. It shouldn't be made behind closed doors.
Do you know what, George? I think you're absolutely spot on there. I hope to God Steve Hasty's watching this, because that was a Steve Hasty-esque rant. That was fantastic, mate. Absolutely loved that. And the passion's shining through. And I think, like you said at the very start, when it comes to the attempts to fly the plane over, and it just shows that it came from good intentions, and it's the passion, it's the want to try and make things better and to try and force people to do the right thing. And the fact that was U-turned, I understand completely why that was, but I would never blame anybody for even coming up with that suggestion, because I can see why. Because like you say, we're kind of all at the end of our tether now, and it's just like, what can we do? And I think that's where this is stemmed from tomorrow, isn't it? We all want to try and make a difference and do something. And absolutely spot on what you've just said there, mate. I've just noticed Dave Harrison's put a comment in there, George, saying, how many folk are we expecting to go tomorrow?
So I think we're looking at between 1 and 200. I think realistically, that's kind of the numbers that we've got. As I understand it, we're going to have at least an interview with TalkSport, and there's some other media, local media involved. Obviously, Liam Kennedy's been in touch with people. The Chronicle have already done a bit of coverage, so we're expecting them to do some more. We've had some contact with various other radio and sports news media coverage, but whether we get that tomorrow on the day, we'll wait and see. But yeah, I think it's going to be a really good day.
Have you spoke to Sky with Keith Downey or Pete Graves?
So they've been contacted. I'm not 100% sure. It wasn't. I think we went through Keith, and it was somebody else that was spoken to. So they're aware. I think we sent a few press releases out early on in terms of what protests NUFC were and what they're about and what we were seeking to achieve, and that's very much the information that we've given. So that went out early on. And we've highlighted the date far and wide across a range of media platforms.
Be interesting to see if they plug that. Very interesting.
Yeah, it will.
It's why I asked, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
Just because, I talked about it before. I think it might have been the last time George was on. Is that I've had some issues with Sky and how they've promoted this takeover, or lack of promotion, or lack of media attention, should I say. I think it's been poor, if I'm honest. And them being the Premier League media partner, I think is a big reason for it. And I think the Premier League are zipping their mouths firmly shut when it comes to Newcastle, because there are far less interesting sports or even football news that get breaking news and massive media attention, whereas this gets absolutely nothing. And for me, this is one of the biggest stories in football. If we win this arbitration, right? If we win this arbitration, right, there are serious questions about the leadership within the Premier League. That, for me, is a global story, not just a national story. That's a global story, because it's a scandal that they are allowed this to happen for over 15 months, even longer than that. If we even get close to winning the CAT case, which I'm confident that we will, right, that's even worse. So, it's like, how is this not even being covered? Even if it turns out that we lose arbitration, I don't particularly think we will, but even if we lose it, it's still a massive story. So for one of the biggest sports media networks in this country, the biggest, to not even cover it, or not even make contact with you as the protest group, I'm shocked that they've not contacted you on the back of that and said, where are you going to be? What's happening? Can we have an interview with you? This is football news with one of their leading Premier League clubs in this country. It baffles me. It absolutely baffles me.
I think
it needs to be 5 minutes or so.
It's quite fitting, though, Peter. Obviously, what Mags just said there, that Sky are worried about upsetting their biggest partner, which to me it's the completely what's true with regards to the article. But even touching on little things like, if you go on the Sky Sports app at the minute, and they break down obviously stories that's going on and stuff like that. But all the transfer talk, the big six have got an individual transfer story little page you can go on.
Always do.
Then all the rest are just crammed into one. It's always about the big six.
Yeah.
And this club, this takeover could take us to another level. It could take us back to the days when we were enjoying going to St James's Park and watching the entertainers in the 90s, and then under Robson again in the early noughties. It's football where you want to go along and you actually thought you had a chance of winning a game, rather than be pleased if we get a point today, or can we hope somebody's going to knack up themselves, so we're not relying on Palace to win or lose or whatever like that. It should all be in our hands again, and it's never going to be like that under Mike Ashley. And I think, to be fair to Keith Downey, I think he's away on holiday this week, so that's probably one of the reasons why he hasn't possibly reached out. I've seen some of his Twitter this week. He's playing golf in the Kent somewhere, so I imagine he's on holiday. I was a little bit surprised that Pete Graves hasn't, because obviously we know his affiliation with Newcastle, but I think this is where sometimes he's got to put the Newcastle narrative to his employers, because he's that person who can get that voice, the NUFC voice, heard on this national media platform. It needs to be covered. It doesn't need to be until, you know, it's going under the radar until the cases have been heard and what the outcome is. It needs to be brought forward now. And if they were calling for transparency, a bit like, you know, Jim Clark's been doing it a little bit about on TalkSport and saying, you know, that there is a need for transparency. It should be played out and we should be able to see what the Premier League are doing. You know, but the Sky, as he says, Sky are just completely under the radar. They're just totally oblivious, all because they don't want to upset the Premier League because obviously they've got the rights and they're a partner. It's just ridiculous. Do you know what I mean? It should be out there and everyone should be able to see what's going on because it's not just, you know, there's 20 stakeholders in the Premier League, not 6. Yeah. And each of us are equal partners, not, you know, a 6 majority and the rest pick up the scraps. So
this is why George and the protest group have started what you've started. This is why the protest is happening tomorrow, in that you've gone back right to the core of it, Richie, this is about the fact that they don't want another power club in the Premier League. They would, because let's face it, you break down that top 6 at the moment, and really, there's only ever really been a top 5. Tottenham haven't won anything during their time at the top. We've kind of just swapped places because where Tottenham were is where we have been. We were before Mike Ashley, and effectively, you know, we actually performed better. We had more title tilts. We had, you know, better successes, you know, in Europe over the span of years. I know they got to the final, but over the span of years, we did better. And if you look at the way Arsenal and Tottenham are performing at the moment, it isn't a top 6 anymore, but it destroys their narrative of the top 6. It's a selling point. And more importantly, it's a selling point for Sky Sports. And that's what they don't want to ruin. But no, absolutely, no, spot on. Great points.
George, I just want to...
Sorry, it just goes to show about, you know, like, they'll happily let Burnley get taken over by, you know,
Americans,
stupid, you know, everyone knows how that takeover's gone and how it's now being run, and you know, you feel sorry for the Burnley fans. But because we're a takeover that can, as Pete mentioned, we can take this club to another level, you know, to the sort of level of Man City and possibly even beyond that in 10 years' time. That's why they don't want to go through, because it's another out of competition for them. That with a team that Newcastle can become, and we all believe we can become. They're scared of it, and that's the issue with it, because someone's finally realised what this club can become and where it should be, and that's why they don't like it.
To respond to what you've just said, then, Richie, you're absolutely right, and I think we've all seen the pictures, we've all seen the media sources about it, but if this takeover, or when, I'm going to sound more positive, when this takeover goes through, we're going to be 10 times richer than Man City's owners. And if you add all the value of all the owners of all the other 19 clubs, we're still richer. And you can see now why they don't want that. That would be their worst nightmare, because then the top 6 is no longer top 6, is it? Or we become the 6th club, and either Arsenal or Tottenham or one of the other clubs fall away. And that's not what they want, obviously.
It's not their decision. It's we're doing it the right way. We're coming in the front door, not trying to come in the back door this. And there's rules in place. And as we all believe, we were ticking all the boxes. So it should be plain sailing. Just what have you got to hide? Again, link back to transparency. That's why. They
even said when the message went out to the supporters trust that they would be happy to play it out in the open. Because there was nothing to hide, but all of a sudden now we want it in the open. They don't. They just cover their own tracks because they know there's something there that if it stays behind closed doors, no one will ever know about it. It'll be dusted under the carpet.
Go on, Chris. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just going to say dead quick, George. I just wanted to ask. I know you said about reaching out to Sky, just out of interest, and if you don't know, it's fine. I just wondered, but has anybody reached out to Jake Humphries? Because I reckon he'd be all over it.
I think we tweeted them a few times, but whether it came from personal accounts or not. But if not, I'll be straight on WhatsApp after this to say, can we get something?
Oh, mate, he's been a massive. You probably know this
Yeah,
anyway, but
he's
he's been a
brilliant.
massive supporter of us as a fan base, and it's well documented. He supports Norwich, but
Yeah.
he's been so supportive. He always speaks up for us as a club, and I loved that time when he took Rio Ferdinand to task and basically argued with him and said, "You're talking shit, mate," without actually saying that. And I just thought it was great. And I thought, what a top bloke, and what a football guy. Because it doesn't matter that it's Newcastle; it could have been any club. You just know that he is a good egg, and he called it out because he knew it was wrong. And I thought that it'd be great if he was to post something, which I'm sure he probably will.
No, definitely.
Statue with his name on it outside St James's Park if he helps us out.
Yeah,
Person.
He'll never have to buy a pint up north again.
No.
In the northeast. Well, maybe not in Sunderland, but he certainly won't have to buy one in Newcastle ever again. But in our last show, Holly joined us, obviously to talk about the protest and promote it. And I asked her a couple of questions about the protest on Friday, and I'll ask you one of the same, really. But the first thing is that I'm really, really pleased to hear when you were describing that you've talked to the Met, that you've had discussions about the safety element of it and the risk assessments and everything that have gone involved. Because I did mention it on that show that they were the things that worried me slightly, that those hadn't been taken into consideration or weren't in place ready for Friday. So it's really, really positive that, that those things were in place, because sometimes with a lot of protests, they're the things that people don't think about. And they're the things that can cause the protest to shut down, and I didn't want that to be the case. But the second thing that I wanted to ask you is that I asked Holly if the Newcastle Supporters Trust had been in touch with you guys, and she'd mentioned that there had been some dialogue. I just wanted to ask you, George, is that dialogue still in place? Are they going to play a role tomorrow? What is their involvement now? There's been some discussions. What is their role within tomorrow, if you can?
So I think the Trust are in a difficult position because they are the recognised fan trust of the club. They're set up under a governance structure which follows the national governance structure of football club trusts, and they're not a protest group. So as members, so some of us who are sort of coordinating things are members. I am. We contact the Trust and we've had various dialogues. I'm being a little bit political here, which wasn't necessarily the intent, but I think they're in quite a difficult situation in terms of where they are. So whether they'll have an active role, I think it'll be down to individual Trust members as opposed to the board. We've certainly had a dialogue. It's been relatively positive throughout. I think for me, could they have done more? Possibly. But I think it would have been, we would have realistically needed longer than 2 weeks to make that happen. And coming at it, so Pete, as you said, all of the things that we had to do to get the protest ready for public consumption, if you like. I think if we hadn't all been distracted by those things, we would have had some really sensible conversations with the club and other people. It's all been very ad hoc and sort of reactionary to various things. So like Warren Barton sending a message as an example, I don't even know where that came from. Medrad sending one just after Amanda being on the TV. So we've all been a little bit starstruck to a certain extent as well, and then overwhelmed because it's not like any of us are on furlough anymore and got loads of time. We're all working full time and sort of trying to coordinate as best you can at lunchtimes and in your breaks and saying, well, who's going to do this and can somebody do that? And has anybody got enough printer paper to print off stuff for the bus? And have we got enough sandwiches and things? So there's been quite a lot that's gone into it. In terms of the Trust, I think it's been cordial and respectful. And I do recognise the position that they're in, and I think we all do. But if anybody wants to change that, they're holding board election memberships. So that's your opportunity, and that's I think if anybody felt strongly enough, then that's what you should be doing.
Do you think that they agree with the fact that there's a protest going on, or do you get the feeling that they're not really keen on it?
I think they agree with the principles behind the protest. So transparency for fans, it's in their narrative, it's in their conversations that they've had with Richard Masters, and you're a hell of an interviewer, Pete, like, because I feel like dodgy.
I'm just here to ask the tough questions, George. I'm sorry.
Yes, but I want to give you my opinion, and my honest opinion is that the principles behind it, I think they're wholly on board with. I think the difficulty is that the trust isn't a protest group, and if they protest on this issue, or were leading the protest on this issue, then they'd have to do it for every issue, and that's not what they are. That they're a trust who are there to communicate with fans and to improve communication between the club. And I think realistically, if you look at the sort of German model in terms of that fans' golden vote, that's what role the trust would have if anything like that came out of the fan-led review. So if the fan-led review that Tracy Crouch is looking at said that, well, actually, we're now going to have a golden fans vote, the legal mechanism and structure is built around the trust. That's what it's there for. So you can understand why protests aren't their top priority. I think that's a fair summation. And hopefully I haven't offended anybody in the trust. And if I have, I apologise sincerely, but that wasn't my intent.
I thought you answered that very well, George, if I'm honest. I thought you were very well said that.
Professional.
Diplomatic.
Yeah.
Let's go to the question, and let's move from the protest talk for a few minutes, and let's go back to arbitration and the cat case and all that entails. So let's go to the question. So question for George: do you feel we could pass arbitration and then have an out-of-court settlement for the cat case?
Yes. So I think we could. I think the passing of the arbitration is an interesting one, and largely down to you guys. The narrative's changed slightly. So from your interview with Ben Jacobs, there was a few things that came up that Ben said that hadn't been said anywhere that I was aware of before, and the things which spring to mind were around that Newcastle don't need to prove that PIF are a complete separate legal entity. They just have to show that there's sufficient separation between MBS and the every day-to-day running of the club, that was new to me. That wasn't something that I'd seen anywhere else before.
George, we picked up on that as well. We picked up on it after the show. We had a little somebody call afterwards, and I think it was Pete who said it, and he was like, "Did you hear that?" And that was a bit of a talking point. So it was no surprise that when we had that chat with Ben, it was no surprise when that really kind of lit the torch paper, so to speak, because we knew people were going to be talking about that. So yeah. Sorry, carry on, George.
Looking at the protest stuff, then I would have been doing threads about that and drilling into it and looking at it in really some kind of detail. He also said about the Odin's director's test, and was it sufficient for and I just saw it flash up on the screen. Yeah, basically, that's
basically that. One of the bags.
So it really isn't fit for purpose, and it's not fit for purpose for two reasons. One, it doesn't deal with a country effectively buying a football club. It doesn't lend itself to any real kind of scrutiny. It's a bit woolly, if I was to put my spin on it. And the other thing is, if the owners and directors test is designed to protect the clubs, right? So that's the narrative that the Premier League spin is designed to stop dodgy owners getting through. How have the Burnley guys got through and the refinancing of the debt? Because my understanding was you had to rock up with here's my £300 million to buy the club. Here's my list of all of the things that I'm going to buy. All of the things that we've been told that Amanda Stavey and the consortium have done. So a 300-page dossier we were told that goes about regional investment and things. That's what the owners and directors test is designed to do, but it lets Burnley's new owners through and not ours. So is it fit for purpose? No. The fact that he's questioning that now seemed to be a completely different direction for him, and an interesting one. So on those 2 points alone, I feel that strengthens our arbitration case. I think that, and linking back to the the transparency agenda and the call from the club, and then subsequently from Amanda Stapley. My personal view on that, tactical. So what did they do in that? So Mike Ashley has basically said to the fans, bring it into the public domain, tell people that this is an issue and that it should be in public. And public interests are a strange thing in terms of law. So my experience of it in criminal law is that there's a public interest test. So in fraud, if you're going to charge somebody for fraud, the severity of the sentence depends on how much of an impact it has in terms of the public. So fraud in the NHS, for an example, is in the public because it's money being taken from the public purse, so it's automatically public interest. So the more public interest you get on something like this, legally it's a little bit stronger. And then Amanda comes on TV, and I mean, that's interesting because we've got all of the naysayers who say there is no takeover, man. There is no takeover. But I think it's fair to say that now a multimillionaire doesn't just come on TV and say, we're here. We don't know about the arbitration because we're not a party to it. And that harks back to the rules. So we know from the Illusion Tractors test and from the Premier League handbook that the flow of information is through the club, and it's the club who have to arbitrate, not PIF and the consortium, as we've said months ago. And even though all of the narrative was we offered the consortium arbitration, but you can't. It's not in your rules to offer the consortium arbitration. You can offer the club to arbitrate, which is what we know has happened. And then the club, well, not the club, St James's Holdings have subsequently set up the CAT case as well. So my confidence has increased exponentially in terms of where we are. I did not see it as a desperate move. I thought it was very tactical in terms of the timing. I think it puts more scrutiny on it. And I think it adds to the scrutiny of the judgment earlier in the year. So, the judgment around removing the chair and understanding that separation was the key issue. I think Ben's narrative is a new focus and an interesting one, and it'd be good to see how that plays out. Part of the reason I want transparency is I want to dissect it afterwards. I'm just genuinely interested, as I told you guys. And then the CAT. So in terms of where we are, we've had the judgment which explained that they've been given a deadline of the 12th, so that was Monday. The ruling was clear that it didn't impact the timings. So he was content with the extension because it didn't impact the timings. So that's suggestive to me that it was already a hearing arranged post that. My understanding of how that will go is that there will be a hearing to consider the two lots of evidence that have been submitted by the Premier League. So that extension to the 12th of July was there. As I understand it, they'd submitted evidence as to why jurisdiction shouldn't be allowed. Then the club had responded, and that was their response to the club's response. And then the judge would make the consideration. So the hearing will happen, and then there will be a further judgment or outcome which says that the CAT is a goer or a not a goer. And it'll probably be either just this is the order or we'll move into case management conference. They'll be the two things that come out of it. My gut feel is that will be played out in the public, irrespective of if you believe that the Premier League tried to get it held in private. As I said last time around, I think there's provision within the rules for elements of the hearings to be held in confidence. But I still haven't had the opportunity to go through it with a fine-tooth comb. It's very high level, and I'm drawn on a few paragraphs which basically infer that if there is something which is commercially sensitive, it would be redacted in effect. That's how I read it. I couldn't see any provision for making a whole case confidential, and I still think that scares the Premier League. And irrespective of, I know I've said about confidence in arbitration, but irrespective of whether we win or lose arbitration, the disclosure which will come from the CAT will be enough to give the Premier League nightmares. because it will knock down that thought of transparency that we're talking about now, which again, I think is part of the reason why the call for transparency is so strong now.
We've got an interesting comment there, George, from Dave Harrison, and he said, George, could the Premier League be looking to save face by losing both cases and then say we had to pass it and the court said we had to? So from what Dave's saying there, he's kind of passing the buck, really, and taking the decision out of their hands.
So part of Ben's narrative, and I'm not sure if it was on your show or on Twitter or somewhere else, but I did see that he'd inferred that the Premier League were really surprised that we delayed the arbitration because they wanted it done quickly. But then that doesn't necessarily line up with the Premier League delaying the hearings that we know about that are in the public domain. But in essence, yes, I think they could absolutely say that we lost arbitration, therefore, because what can they do? I mean, you don't necessarily want to upset your media partners. You don't want to upset other clubs, your big six, your cartel. But if they've sort of got a court order held over them, then that's the position. I think the Cat's a different story, though, because the Cat has the potential to lose them a significant proportion of money. And ultimately, the Premier League it's not an income-generating organisation. It's the sort of, it's a member organisation, isn't it? So all of the clubs are members of the Premier League. The Premier League is the sort of governance arrangements of it. So all of the income, in theory, is redistributed to the Premier League clubs. So that income from media rights and things, if the Cat said, well, actually, we're going to award St James's Holding X million pounds, that basically comes out of everybody's pocket, not just the Premier League, unless there's some kind of provision in accounts or reserves that they've built up. But to be honest, I haven't had a chance to look at the Premier League's accounts either, and it's not something I'm going to have time to do anytime soon. So I think yes, in terms of the arbitration, Cat's a little bit more complicated. Strategically, I think the Cat was originally a leveraging tool. So, and I think the club did it out of sequence, because if they'd lined it up timely, the disclosure would have happened before arbitration, and that would have been the sufficient exposure for it to get done quickly. I think now if I put myself in Mike Ashley's shoes, not a nice thought, except he's got
and Donny socks.
Yeah, he's done. If I look at him and I look at the fact that he's an astute businessman, that he's increased his wealth during lockdown, and that he's got an opportunity here to get the sale of his club and potentially awarded for damages as well, then why wouldn't he go for it? What's stopping him? Because he's walking away at the end of the day. He's got no skin in the game if he gets rid of the club.
And no shoes. You have your shoes. I think we'll go to something that, Richie, that you spotted. It's a message here. Talk us through it.
Yeah. Matt had put a little picture, obviously comment there, saying, "What do we all make of Nick DeMarco's latest tweet of the Green Book titled Arbitration?" Now, I think, Daz, I don't know whether you managed to get the picture up, but
ahead of the game.
Yeah. All right, again. So it reads, "Many thanks to my brilliant friend such and such for sending me a copy of the latest edition of the Cass Green Book she co-authors. The book is essential, an unrivaled one for any international sports lawyer." Now, I must say, right, when I saw this and he put the arbitration on, I thought it's phenomenal. Has Newcastle been given the green light? We never know for the cascade on their arbitration. So that looks like it's going to be a read for you, George.
Cancel the buses.
Yeah, I wonder if I can borrow Nick DeMarco's copy. I spend enough time on his Twitter, like, where I could probably tell you what he's doing tonight, to be fair.
The bread pictures were real. We're all going mad.
This is more real though, because this is This isn't even, he's not even sugarcoating this, and it begs the question. There's a lot of talk that Monday could be the day that everything kicks off, or certainly next week. And it is, would be fitting for him to put this out at the end of this week, knowing what's to come. So he's not sugarcoating it like he was previously, but it's definitely a positive sign. But these guys are all confident. They're all confident, and I think the way the Premier League have handled the things, particularly in the last couple of months with all the delays and stuff, it's probably given them even more reason to be confident, because I think they've held off tactics. I asked the question to Ben Jacobs. It's a great question from Dave earlier about, are the Premier League just wanting to go for arbitration so they don't have to make the decision? And he agreed, and he said that could be a likely scenario. And I'm believing that it is. I think it is. I think it's always been their intentions to let it slide and to go to arbitration. But I think they've held it off for as long as they possibly could, in the hope that PIF walk away. It was only in December that there was people saying that the PIF, if we don't have it by March, they'll walk away. If we don't have it by May, they'll walk away. We're now in July, and Amanda Staveley was very, very clear that they are not giving up. And I think at this point now, there's no getting away from the Premier League, and they're just having to say, we've done our bit to be N Sports and the top six. We've done our bit. We've held them off long enough. They're still here. We're going to have to let them through. And I think that'll be the case. It will just be the case of what date and when do we sign that off.
What is it Amanda said? You can't see it now behind that comment, but we don't ever give up.
There you go.
And what is it that Myrdad said? Never going to give you up, when you referred to the Rick Astley song up there in the top left-hand corner of your screen. So, it's not going away.
No.
I mean, it's interesting to know, fellas, that's a £270 book.
Oh. Maybe he's just trying to sell books.
Yeah.
No, yeah,
For his friends.
books.
We'll put a play out now. So if Nick DeMarco, if you're watching, George another free copy.
I'll get it back here when I'm finished with it after the takeover.
Yeah.
Come on the show. We'd love to have you.
Yeah.
You can talk bread. The dictator should be back by then, Martin. He'd love to chat to you. So where do you want to go next, lads? We've got we're coming up 5 minutes to the hour, but where would you like to go?
You know what I'd love? I'd at some point down the line, I'd love to have George back on again, and to maybe go through a breakdown of all of this, even going back from November, not in like recipes, because there's been a lot of stuff, but you've obviously covered this, George, all the way through. I've followed your threads. The lads on the panel have followed your threads as well, and they've been a fantastic read all the way through. And I think the breakdown of things, of how it's come to this point, I think it'd be really good on the show to sort of have that and talk about that in a little bit more detail, if you're up for it, obviously.
Oh yeah, honestly, it's a brilliant use of my Thursday night, lads. I really do enjoy it as decompressed, you know what I mean? And just, you've given us a soapbox to shout about Newcastle, which the missus doesn't like. So,
are you really short, George? Are you kneeling down or something?
Because I came in the kitchen, so I've been on my knees for the last 45 minutes.
Oh God!
So I'm squatting now.
That's commitment, that mate. That is commitment.
Dedication. Lads, maybe we just change tact again for the last bit. I just want to maybe we talk about the keepers with Dubravka needing surgery now, and in the new kit there, and Freddie Woodman not going on loan to Bournemouth. That's been held off. So are we back with Darlow again in the sticks for the start of the season?
It's an interesting one. Firstly, I think Bournemouth would have been a fantastic loan for Woodman. I think that is the next step for him. So he's had loans in Scotland. He's had a couple of loans at Swansea now that have been around the playoff positions, but never really been the favourites to go up. Him at Bournemouth now is kind of like Bournemouth are looking to get promoted. Scott Parker's in charge. They've got a team good enough to get promoted. That's a great step up for him to potentially win his place in the Premier League. But you know what? if Dubravka's injured and it is a concern because he's a fantastic goalkeeper, I'd be bringing him in and saying, right, okay, let's see what you and Darlow are like in pre-season and go with the one that performs the best. Because for me, I've got just as much confidence in Freddie Woodman coming in and being our number one if Dubravka's injured than I have Cole Darlow. So go either way, but give him an opportunity to prove himself at Premier League level.
Sorry, Martin is going to run off to watch Love Island.
Marty. I've got it on the court, by the way, but can't miss your Newcastle talks, you know what I mean?
I think with regards to the goalkeeper situation, I'm a bit similar to Pete. I would be using this as a perfect time to see how good he is compared to Darlow. It could be a way to get, if he can oust Darlow the number 2, we could actually get a look at them to see what he could be like as a Premier League number 1. And you never know if he does so well. He won the Golden Gloves in the Championship last year with Swansea. So, if he starts well with us, would Dubravka then have a trouble getting back in? Because everyone seems to think that Woodman is our number 1 going forward for the future. We'll take the reins over after Dubravka. But does anyone think it could be too early for him if he was to come in and look like a number 1?
Do you know what, Rich? Just to jump in there, mate, to answer that, it could be too early for him, but the only way you're going to find out is by giving him a go. I mean, again, I said earlier I hadn't been on social media. Do we know how long Dubravka's out for?
No, he may need surgery. So
right, okay.
Yeah.
So
he's going to miss the start of the season. Looking like
right. Why not? Like Pete said and Rich, go for the pre-season, test Darlow, test Woodman. Maybe start with Woodman as number 2 if Darlow, is showing that he should be the number 1 in the absence of Dubravka. But maybe say to Woodman, listen, we want to keep hold of you till January. Be in and around the first team squad, be in and around a Premier League team. And then if he's not getting the football that he needs, send him out on loan then. But get him in and around the squad. That's my only concern about us constantly keep sending him out. Don't get me wrong, I think he would have had a fantastic season at Bournemouth. Now they've got Scott Parker in, and no doubt they're going to bring in a couple of other players, top quality players. They're probably going to be one of the favourites to go up in the Championship. So that would have been a fantastic move for Woodman, don't get me wrong. But I would like to see him in and around the squad, and I would like to see what he's like between the sticks, because it's all well and good having potential, and it's all well and good, being able to play. But can he play in front of 52,000 week in, week out? That's what you need to know. And until you do it, you don't know. Yeah, exactly. You don't know. So that's my thoughts on it.
Woodman and Dean Henderson are, I think, at the same age. Wow. Very similar age, which, Henderson's had a great season, got promoted with Sheffield United, had a good season with them in the Premier League. He's now fighting for the number 1 place with De Gea. There's no reason why Woodman can't do the same. It's like say it's either now or never.
Yeah, it feels that way, Pete. What do you reckon, Daz?
No, I'm sorry. I'm just laughing at Martin's comment that Paul from the Tune Review is actually on Love Island, and it wasn't me that said it this time. It was Martin. So remember that, Paul, when the revenge comes. Just on the keepers. I like this time last year when slightly few weeks on when Dubravka got injured in the preseason game, I was really worried. I thought Darlow was going to fuck it up and we were definitely going to get relegated then when I heard that. But especially when we didn't bring in that many players. But no, I have a bit more confidence now in Darlow. He did really well, and I think
he did.
If Dubravka wasn't injured, and they made the decision that we're going to try and loan out Woodman again. I thought they might try and sell Darlow. I thought Darlow might want to leave, but no, I'm not as worried this time. To tell you the truth, as it's regards the goalkeeping situation, I'm still worried. I'm always worried when Steve Bruce is manager, but I'm also the other factor there. I suppose we'll be talking about close to the season is that at least we have Graham Jones in there now to bit of tactical help, I'd say, for Bruce. So I'm not as worried at the moment.
George, what are you thinking on the keepers, mate?
So I think I agree with what you have said there, but I immediately think about Fraser Foster and that he was one that got away because we just didn't play him and we didn't give him the opportunity to. So he went to Celtic as well. I've got a good pal who supports Celtic, and I would sort of get the lowdown on from him about how he's playing. Same with Woodman, and obviously he's a decent keeper. And I mean, harking back to the 90s again, but the Scottish and English leagues are similar in terms of the way that they're played. You haven't got the same level of quality there now anymore. But I mean, you've got some players who couldn't get Newcastle's team setting Rangers teams on light, making them look like world beaters. But I think it's now or never, really, isn't it? You give them a chance or get them out on loan, and now seems like an opportune time to give them a chance. Put him and Doll up against each other, see who's the better of them, and then give the kid a chance.
Daz, I'm just going to jump in now, mate, and just say, I know we spoke about it earlier, but some of us are up tomorrow early, aren't we, George? We're up at the crack, mate, and I know that George is on his knees praying for that takeover. So I think we need to save his knees, don't we?
For tomorrow, we do. I think it's time to say goodbye. But just before we do, I want to say shout out to our sponsors and get rid of that comment for a second. Yep, cool. Cheers. So yeah, shout out to Centre Ale and Bruce in Centre Ale. Bruce in. Go check out the details on what Bruce has to offer. He's always posting up some weird and wonderful craft ales and this and that and the other. So yeah, somewhere to check out. And also want to say as well to say thanks for everyone for watching. Like and comment and subscribe. On the player, you'll see on YouTube, you'll see loads of our previous shows, including the one that we've mentioned tonight, the one from Ben. Upcoming shows as well. We have a music show, or 2 music shows coming next week. Again, I don't have the poster for your one yet, done, Richie, but I've got Martin's one for Tom Lumley and the Brave Liaison. That's going to be a live acoustic session next Thursday. And Richie, who have you got coming on Wednesday before we tell people what's coming on Loaded Mag?
Yeah, we've got Liverpool band, so Chris will be interested in this one. We've got the Merchants, so you might know about them already, Chris, but they're pretty big, and they did something last year. There was a bit of a, I think it was like a mini festival, like a lockdown festival that they did at the M&S Arena, and it was all about supporting the NHS in Liverpool. So they got a lot of good feedback off that. The tunes are fantastic, really, really are, and so it's definitely worth a watch. No doubt you'll be the first one to attend a gig with someone on the show, Chris.
Yeah,
nice one.
Yeah,
nice one. And then then next Friday we have the lads will have got us our takeover. The transport apparently will be all done and dusted. So we'll all be talking about Saudi again, and who better to bring on than our friend Aloid. So Aloid is going to join us next Friday night. I think some of the boys are going away on a bit of a holiday as well during the week. So yeah, but next Friday we'll have Aloid with us. Looking forward to that as well. So that should be fun. And that's it, guys, I think, for tonight. We want to thank George for coming back on again. My first time to be on the show with you, George. We'll definitely have you back again. And great to have you. And best of luck to everyone. Best of luck to both George and Chris, who are going to be at the protest tomorrow. And best of luck to everyone attending as well, and everyone in the chat, and anyone that's listening back to this or listening to this on the bus on the way down. Enjoy. And
also, just that shout out, John. JJ has just shouted out. Just as a quick reminder for anyone who's going down, that the bus will be leaving Barrack Road at 5 a.m. So set your alarm clocks early for that one if you're going down.
Good luck.
Nice one. Nice one. Don't miss the bus. No. You don't want to have that. Okay, lads. Thanks for everyone for watching and listening. And we'll talk to you again.
Cheers,
bye-bye.
Good night.
Thanks.
It's okay, guys.